Welcome back. You're watching Political Exchange. I'm Karima Brown. I'm in discussion with Cas Kuvadia on the South African banking sector. Before the break, we were talking about, you were saying that what you need is cooperation between your institution and governments, or rather the ruling party's idea of transforming Postbank and play to the strengths of both in order to get better financial inclusion. Now, we know that we have come a long way since, the democratic breakthrough, but there's obviously a lot still more to be done in terms of looking at financial inclusion. If you and I've read that you were arguing, given our high unemployment rate and the dependency on grants, it's very difficult to offer that sector of the community financial products because of the fact that there's no independent economic activity. How difficult is it to provide profitable in the long run banking services to the indigent, to the very poor?
Well, look, we currently 63% of our population is banked. Finmark Trust will come up with its latest FinScope study in a couple of weeks' time, which will show that that figure has actually gone up. So
if you were to be estimating, what would that figure be showing us?
Probably about 67%. So we're making progress. Okay, where we need to actually begin to make further progress is that we have a banking sector that's heavily regulated. We will implement Basel III on the 1st of January 2013, and we're at the cutting edge of international best practice as far as the regulation goes, and we have no problem with that. But at the same time, we have significant developing country challenges. Mm-hmm. And so, one, we've always called for a more diversified sector. So Cooperative Banks Act is now in place. We are supporting the Cooperative Banks Development Agency, where we are asked to do so, with capacity to help them actually do certain things. And we believe that we can work with cooperative banks, again, in partnership, to see how we can leverage off them to actually deliver financial services and ensure their own sustainability. A few years ago, you wouldn't have thought of banks actually using spaza shops as agents. Mm-hmm. Banks now use spaza shops as agents. So different mechanisms are being looked at to get financial services where they need to get to. Having said that, there are significant numbers of people in this country who do not have the disposable income to save. There are significant numbers of people in this country who cannot afford private sector credit. And it's in those areas that we need to see how government can actually come to the party. There are a number of regulatory issues that could be dealt with that would actually reduce the cost of banking in those circumstances. There are incentives that government could put into place. Now, every time we raise that, the sort of response we get from some parts of government is, why should we incentivize you? You make enough money as it is, okay? But that's not the issue. The issue is that we need to incentivize you in certain instances because those markets just aren't working. And if we have the appropriate incentives in place, we start interacting with those markets, then we start generating activity in those markets, banks start learning how to do business in those markets, and people who have not been in banking are slowly being brought in.
Now, one of the big issues, of course, is the question of unemployment and how best to stimulate growth. And the SME sector is often touted as, the kind of silver bullet. We know that the sector contributes some 34% to GDP and about 60% to employment. Now, when I interviewed the finance minister, whilst he was very complimentary about the soundness of the banking system in terms of regulation, he did say that you are not doing enough to provide access to the SME sector. And of course, your answer to that is, risk is a big factor. Most SMEs fail in the initial stages, so it feeds into risk. What is your response to the criticism that you're not doing enough to, in fact, assist the growth of that sector?
Okay, firstly, let me say that 96% of all SME finance in this country is done by banks. Okay, so I think we need to identify what we mean by we're not doing enough. Between 2003 and 2008, in the charter market, we did 15 billion rand worth of housing, SME finance, black SME finance. We're pretty close to, touchwood, gazetting the code for the financial sector code. And until 2017, we've actually committed much more money. So all of that is happening. But again, we need to ask the question. The majority of SMEs that are financed fail.
Why is that?
And exactly. So is finance the number one issue? Finance is undoubtedly the issue, an issue.
Well, the banks is fond of saying it's not the question of access to capital, it's the fact that SMEs don't identify proper markets.
No, it's also that SMEs, you know, people have the entrepreneurial skills. They have ideas of what they want to do. But the administrative support, the managerial support, the skills of maintaining and running a business are where we need to actually do some stuff. Now, banks do some of that. We used to have an argument with Kula. Kula used to say banks aren't using the guarantee. We say that if we are convinced that a business is sustainable, and then the entrepreneur does not have collateral, we will apply for the guarantee. But if we are not convinced the business is sustainable, it doesn't make sense for us or the entrepreneur to lend that money. Now again here, Small Enterprise Development Agency has been set up by government to provide non-financial support. Again, how can we work together to actually do that? We are more than willing to play a role in that.
Mr. Guvadia, from what it seems to me, what you're saying is that all these institutions have been created, and yet there is very little coordination, it seems. I mean, very recently I spoke to the COO of CEDA, Kuni Slabert, about how, you know, they interact with yourselves. And it seems as if the structures are there, but there's either the lack of political will or the inability in terms of the institution's capacity to actually, you know, knit these things together in order to get banking services and products out to people.
I think that is the problem. And again, it's you know, my wish is that if we could just identify what we as a country need to do. What do we want to achieve through delivering financial services to as many people as possible? Let's at least agree on that. If we can agree on that, then let's say, if we do it the following way, are we achieving that objective? If not, why not? If we actually begin to collaborate a bit more, without throwing bricks at each other. One, accept that the banking sector needs to make a profit. Two, accept that the banking sector must not pass on all the risk to government. The banking sector must share risk appropriately. Three, accept that there are a whole range of non-financial areas that need to be addressed. Banking sector is more than willing to work with government to address that, but let's identify those and address those. Four, let's accept that ideally the private financial sector should be active in many areas of the market as possible. Let them take all the risk in markets that work. Let not government come in there, but let government actually work with them in markets that don't.
One of the things that is also a sticking point is the question of transformation of the banking sector. Now, we know that the BEE, once empowered, always empowered rule is apparently excluded from the final draft of the new codes that you've been issued with. Now, I think it is Mr. Mamoniat from the Treasury who said that BEE can't trump financial stability. And this was in relation to the kind of equity that would have to be placed in black hands. And he was saying if you have to have 15%, it has to be in cash, you have to have it in hand, you can't borrow it. Doesn't that very real implementation of the Basel III rules actually just disempower the whole idea of transforming equity in terms of the way in which banks are structured in South Africa?
Well, the thing is that banks and financial institutions are unlike other businesses. The reality is that if a bank gets into trouble, the Reserve Bank wants to look to its shareholders first before it uses taxpayers' money. Now, if we want to go another route, if we want to go the Europe route, then we'll say, okay, let people own parts of banks. Bank gets into trouble, don't go to those people, use taxpayers' money to bail them out. Now, I don't think that's the route to go. But we also need to ask, what do we mean by transformation? I mean, to be quite honest with you, what difference does it make in the way a bank is operating if that bank has 15 or 20% black ownership? At the end of the day, black shareholders are looking for returns on their shares. They're looking for dividends on their shares. has very little impact on the operations. I spend most of my time through the association in pushing the envelope to see how banks can change the way they're doing business, but still be profitable and sustainable, but begin to look at it differently so as to broaden access. It doesn't matter to me one little bit who the shareholders of that bank are. Internationally, the majority of bank shareholding is through institutional ownership because institutions have the money to actually come to the party if they need to. So I think that we just need to understand, and the revision of the codes is looking more at the broad-based empowerment stuff. And I think that's where we should be concentrating. And also on the once empowered, always empowered. In the new codes compromise we've reached, we've said if a bank takes a business decision that dilutes ownership, black ownership, without creating value to that ownership, then the once empowered, always empowered will apply. But if the bank has shareholders now and black shareholders decide to sell to white people and there's dilution, what is the bank expected to do about it? What is any business expected to do about it? And I think that if government takes the view that they want black people not to sell to white people, then maybe the PIC should warehouse those shares and sell it to white people. But you can't, there's nothing, you can't say it's the responsibility of the bank to ensure that black people sell their shares to black people. You can't do that. I mean, the bank is just not able to do that. So I think that we need to look at what we want to achieve through our transformation policy.
Mr. Kuvadia, final question. You've raised the question of stopping the rhetoric. Institutions must do what they have to do. There must be better trust. Quickly, what is the prognosis for the banking sector in relation to their relationship with government? You know, where are we going?
Look, we have a good relationship with government. Okay, it's tough, it's complex, I think on both sides. Our interaction with different departments might have different tenors of complexity. But we talk to government all the time. We have the space to give input and so on. Or the appeal I'm making is that while, and a lot of that talk is around policy and so on, the appeal I'm making is that while those continue, let's just unpack some critical issues and actually start working from an implementation point of view together on that. And as we knock heads on the implementation, it will actually also inform policy and what we need to do in policy to enable the implementation to happen.
So a very dynamic process.
Yeah.
Mr. Kuvadia, we've run out
Absolutely.
of time. Thank you so much for your time.